While Spartan's generation was a return to the classic Halo feel, Lifebringer was a step forward into the alien, the different, the unknown. It's natural for a progressive universe. New enemies, new music, new weapon and armor designs, they all show how time is moving in this series of stories instead of everything staying the same. Lifebringer was the perfect continuation for the Reach trilogy. These old characters that we know and love get thrust into an alien world full of mystery, danger, and psychotic alien mothers, and all the while they're growing both in personal development and in their relationship with each other. Make no mistake, Lifebringer is not about the Lifebringer. It's about Zack and Guardian, and I think that's what makes it one of the most engaging and entertaining stories I've told to date. After the Reach trilogy wrapped up in 2010 with episode 15 of The Last War, I was immediately thinking of what a sequel would be like. Last War ended with the surviving characters separating. Logan retires, Commander Solik returns to his homeworld, and Guardian, Zack, and Captain Riepel head out to hunt down the remaining Loyalists. Originally, the sequel would follow the trio on their mission, taking them from planet to planet as they wiped out the remnants of the Fleetmaster's forces, and they would uncover the next big enemy of the Spartan legacy. However, I decided I want something a little smaller, a little more personal, a little more explorative and dangerous in character development. How would a long journey into the unknown region of space affect an aging, closed-off Spartan and his AI? What if they crashed on a mysterious planet and encountered a new enemy? What if that enemy was a step up from elites? What if it was a forerunner? And then Halo 4 came along in 2012 and did all that anyway. But I kept to that story. I had it first, after all, and it was too good not to tell. I started writing Lifebringer early in 2013, and then I graduated high school and my life crashed. My depression soared and I quit making Machinima for a while. A few months later, and I started over, shelving Lifebringer and starting Odd Men Out. A couple of years passed and I felt ready to dive back into the Halo universe. That would be about the time I started writing Spartan's Generation as well. The bookends fit perfectly. Generation featured classic Halo music and art design, familiar themes, and Return the Elites as the main enemy. Meanwhile, Lifebringer is on the opposite side of the spectrum. It has music by a different composer, the designs of weapons and armor has changed, 2 fresh enemy factions were introduced, and the main themes, especially the exploration of an AI as a main character, were intriguing and offered huge differences in perspective. One thing that changed those stories' perspective was Zack's character. He's still mostly as he was in The Last War, quiet and deadly. But now he's spent years with Guardian, and Guardian's different than the other characters as an AI. Zack expresses a lot more emotion around Guardian, and is especially torn up when he thinks he may have to kill his best friend. Around other humans, though, he doesn't say much except for what needs to be said. He's been like this since his traumatic events in the Spartan 3 program, but Lifebringer is where he begins to open up a little more, and this begins with Guardian. In the future, we'll see him develop more and more as a person instead of as a killing machine, and he'll get to experience changes and emotions that we haven't really seen in a Spartan before, especially not an older generation Spartan. He's a fascinating character to me, and the room he has for growth is immense. Not to mention Riley Mikesell's stellar delivery of his character. Riley's a very talented voice actor with a lot of charisma, providing characters like Zack and Mailer and Odd Men Out. And he knows exactly who Zack is and how he should sound. His take on Zack is unique because he gives him kind of a softer voice, which you wouldn't expect for a super soldier, but it works. It fits Zack's quiet style perfectly, and he really breaks out the emotion when needed, which is rare, but really punctuates the few times that Zack's control cracks and lets out a little of what's on the inside. 1167 Humble Guardian is a very special character in the Spartan legacy. He's been featured since the beginning, minus Generation, of course. First as the rampant monitor of Omega Halo, then as Phoenix Team's tactical AI, now as the homeward bound onboard custodian. He's got a one-of-a-kind viewpoint on the world compared to the other characters. Guardian's been around since before this Age of the Galaxy even began. He remembers who the Forerunners are and what they were like. He's a being out of time, but now he's spending all his time with these humans and he's affecting him. In Lifebringer we see him shed his shell and become his own person. This transformation is reflected in his voice. When he was first found in Spartans, he was all stiff and serious and barely had any inflection in his voice. He was a robot, made to serve his creators. Since the beginning of The Last War, he spent 7 years in the company of humans. He's relaxed a bit, developed a more casual and humorous personality. Sounds more like a human and less like a robot, especially when speaking with Zack. But when the Lifebringer starts dragging him back towards his own past, he begins to regress and use his old speech patterns. You can hear him going back and forth between his old self and the new personality, as his old programming starts to resurface and he starts fighting himself, until his old programming totally takes over and he's once again the monitor of Installation 07. But this can't keep him down for long. He isn't able to kill Zack, the friend he's grown so fond of, and the new personality he's developed breaks out again, forces the old personality out and completely becomes Guardian's identity. This is finalized when he helps defeat the Lifebringer. He shed his original name, changing it to just Guardian, and now stands against his creators in defense of his friends. Machines don't have friends, people do, and one can tell that Guardian's really grown since his first appearance. People like Catherine and Zack have made all the difference to him, enough so that he betrays his original purpose and creates his own meaning for existence, standing alongside his allies and his friends. When it came to writing Sergeant Denver, I had one goal in mind, creating a strong, independent female character. At least from a guy's perspective, it can be difficult not to fall into tropes and stereotypes when writing a woman, so it creates a unique challenge that, if pulled off right, adds a great element to the story and additional fun when writing it. I think I succeeded with Denver. She's a tough-as-nails soldier who can definitely hold her own in combat, but she's not over the top. She expresses concern for her fellow soldiers, shows shock at Guardian's betrayal, and stands up against the story's main antagonist, and she's not even a Spartan. When it came to picking a voice actor for the good sergeant, my old boss from my first job was perfect for the role. This is one of Emma's first forays into voice acting, the other being Commander Adara in Biker on 3. Emma really enjoys her character and is really invested, two highly needed qualities when it comes to voice acting. In fact, she and Sergeant Denver are very nearly the same person. They're tough, stubborn, and they take nobody's shit. Denver didn't get a whole lot of screen time in Lifebringer due to the story revolving around Zack and Guardian, but she'll be back. And I'm super excited to continue her story and see where she goes. The Lifebringer herself was an interesting concept to me. I wanted to make the Lifebringer different than other villains I'd written in the past. She's not a soldier or expert tactician, she's a mother, once part of the Forerunner social caste in charge of engineering life on other planets. She cares very deeply about her children, the Hyborians, and maybe she once had that care for other life forms too. But then the Flood came along and wiped out those life forms and it broke her. Her methods of fighting the Flood were too extreme, they came at the cost of her humanity, or whatever passes for humanity for Forerunners. In making the Hyborians, she gave her brethren a fate worse than death, twisting their minds and trapping them inside robotic killing machines for all eternity. It took her sanity and her decency and left a monster in their place. The Lifebringer's main driving force is very different from past antagonists in a huge way. The Shipmaster and Commander Thalashes were unbridled racism, the Fleet Masters were power and greed, but the Lifebringer's is love, a massive love for her children and a desire to see them where she believes they should be, on top of everybody else. If that means wiping out whole races that she once swore to protect, so be it. Alyssa jumped at the chance to play the Lifebringer. She's always wanted to be a villain, and she channels the Lifebringer's insanity and ruthlessness almost horrifyingly well. The scene where Zack meets the Lifebringer and she's walking around him explaining her backstory and her plans, set to the steadily chanting music, is spine-chilling. I personally think it's one of the best single scenes I've ever done, and Alyssa is the key to it. The Hyborians were another step into the unknown. As far as I know, no one has ever attempted to have real Forerunners in a Machinima before. Obviously, with humans being the only playable race in Halo 4, I was faced with a challenge. Luckily, Halo 4 features a lot of alien-looking armor, like Engineer and Stalker, so that made it less difficult. It helped that Halo 4 included the first ever Forerunner weaponry, but even the weapons and the armor together didn't quite give the effect that I wanted. Something was missing. Then I realized that if I couldn't go any further in the visual department, I'd have to make advances in the field of audio. I commissioned my friend Shane Blair, voice of Flim and Nostrom and a talented audio artist, to create a range of voices for the new enemies, and oh boy did he deliver. The sound effects make it. When you first hear that Enforcer gurgle out that bone-chilling cry in Part 2, you really get a sense of, oh crap, this is something new and deadly. And because they've been custom-tailored for this Machinima and not pulled from something else, they really give the Hyborians a sense of originality and otherworldness. I ran through a bunch of different designs for them until I finally settled on the 5 types that I liked. Each one was structured with the rest in mind. They're all designed to support each other. And even that didn't quite turn out how I liked 100%, I think it still worked really well. The Shock Troopers, the standard soldier, make up the bulk of the Hyborians that are usually backed up by stronger classes. You can usually see the squad leader carrying a light rifle. He can deploy a regeneration field to heal his squad. Enforcers provide long-range fire support and suppression. Eradicators are friggin' scary, with their bellow and their cannon and their ability to blast holes in just about everything. These three you can see supporting each other in several scenes throughout the series, and they work great together. But the other two classes were harder to implement, more complicated, and I think maybe I messed up their execution a bit. The Poltergeists were supposed to first appear in the Reformist base scene and they make appearances alongside other Hyborians in bigger battles, overwhelming their enemies while other stronger classes did the damage, and they were supposed to appear in packs of 5. But almost nobody on my friends list had the tracker armor, so they went from packs of 5 to 3, and I could only include them in 3 scenes, the initial one in part 3 and 2 in part 5, with Zack being the only other character in the room, and even then, one of the scenes in part 5 got cut because I felt it hurt the pace of the episode. And there was a problem I hadn't anticipated. The Poltergeists were designed to have wild, erratic, untrackable movement to throw off their opponents. But that also makes them stupidly hard to film. And some of my camera work in the 2 Poltergeist scene is rather shoddy in my opinion. The Vindicators suffered the same problem as the Poltergeists, in which nearly nobody had the required armor. They fared a bit better, and I managed to keep my original idea of 4-man squads, but their implementation was limited quite a bit. Their introduction scene where they absolutely rip apart a group of unsuspecting reformists is great. It really captures what I wanted the Vindicators to feel like. But I probably shouldn't have armed them with all close-range weapons while all the protagonists have medium-range weapons, because after that, all the battles with them kind of make the Vindicators look like chumps, and I hate that I made that mistake. Not enough foresight there. Definitely something I'll be thinking about in future productions. And then we have the other antagonists of the series, the Radical Reformation. The Reformists serve the same purpose as the Covenant in the first Halo game. They're a MacGuffin, a device to drive the plot towards its true purpose and most startling reveal, the Hyborians and, ultimately, the Lifebringer. Not to say they're meaningless though, they certainly provide an interesting addition to the Spartan legacy. I haven't had humans fighting humans before. I'd already figured that since Reach the Last War wrapped up the human versus elites wars, I figured the natural progression from that would be humans versus humans. Of course, with Halo 4 removing the ability to play as elites, I had to abandon my initial idea of having Zack fight the last loyalists and fast forward to after they had been defeated. This just thrust the Reformists on stage a little sooner than I'd planned, but it actually ended up benefiting the story. The Reformists are on Cradle searching for powerful technology, something that allowed me to further the storytelling of both the Reformists, establishing that they're a scavenger/technology worshipping faction, and the storytelling of Cradle, giving me opportunities to provide exposition and world building. Like the Hyborians, the Reformists went through several different designs before I settled on the ones that appear in the series. One early concept featured them using a mix of human and Covenant weapons, but I dropped that idea because I figured it would be more confusing in firefights if the opponents and the main characters were using human weapons. Another concept had the Reformists wearing sleek purple armor, but I abandoned that idea too. I wanted to keep some semblance of the Reformist humanity to reinforce the scavenger feel. And so they ended up wearing rugged brown power armor with colored strips to denote rank. The only alien-looking armor the Reformists wear is worn by commanders, with the skull face mask. The colored strips tie the Reformists to the previous adversaries into the Spartan legacy, the elites. Blue for infantry, red for sergeants, and yellow for commanders, with my own addition of the green-striped heavy gunner. The Radical Reformation is a threatening opponent, as they have access to powerful alien weapons, vehicles, and tech that they've gathered over the years. But they're also kind of a bumbling one. They aren't the battle-hardened elites we've been seeing for several years, and they're not a highly trained, organized military faction. They're just a collection of outcasts and desperate people who see technology as their key to power. They believe that the UNSC is oppressing them and want to bring it down, but they have neither the organization or the training to do it. Their military structure is loose at best, with only a handful of commanders governing the Cradle operation. When Zack shows up and the Hyborians awake, they're totally caught off guard and are quickly wiped out, despite their advanced tech. While they have loads of Covenant weapons, these weapons weren't made for human hands. They were made for a totally different species. The Reformists are trying to be terrorists, they're trying to be powerful, but they just aren't there yet. The story for Lifebringer did not change much since I first cemented the basic plot structure. Crash land on Forerunner planet, battle only human enemy, meet Forerunner enemy, Guardian turns bad, redeem Guardian, defeat Forerunner enemy. The Zack vs. Reformist commander scene was put in to provide some exposition about the Reformists, but the rest went pretty according to plan. The first big decision I made when writing the series was killing Captain Riepel. I really didn't want to write off one of the only survivors of the Reach trilogy so quickly, but I think he wouldn't have added much to the story without a ship to run. and I think he only would have been detrimental to it, so the captain went down with his ship. The death of the Homeward Bound was hard for me to write too. Like its captain, it was one of the few ties left to the Reach trilogy, but damn, its crash scene was awesome. Originally, I was going to do it in Forge, but I realized that it wouldn't look very good, so I commissioned the immensely talented Pude08 to create the scene for me, and it went better than I ever could have expected. I vowed to only use CGI to do what I can't effectively do in the game engine as a principle, but I think it's safe to say that we'll see more of Pude's work in the future. I'm still surprised that I managed to put some of the bigger scenes in the series together so well. I had some of the biggest battles I've ever produced going on between Zack, the Reformist, and the Hyborians, from the Reformist base in Episode 3 to the Ice Canyon in Episode 4. There are sometimes so many things going on in these scenes it's impossible to catch it all in the first viewing, and it gives an effective sense of scope to the battles going on all over Cradle as the Hyborians wipe out the Reformists and Zack and Teresa fighting all through it. Luckily, I had a lot of devoted fans to help out, and as always, I am thankful for everyone who attended. These Machinimas wouldn't be half as good as they are without the people who body act for me. Lifebringer was also the set for another experiment for me. About a month from release, Zed Productions, a good friend of mine, remarked that he was disappointed that Spartan's Generation didn't feature helmet-filtered voices for the characters, explaining that a helmet speaker effect would augment the characters and portray them more realistically. So I gave it a shot. I wasn't sure about it at first, but no one has reacted negatively to it so far. Leave a comment and let me know what you think. Should I continue using the filter for the Spartan Legacy installments, or leave it out? Does it help or hurt? I'd love your input. So, after 6 years, we finally have a sequel to the Reach trilogy. Took a while to get here, yes, but everything happens in its time. The one thing to remember about Lifebringer is that while it can stand alone as a self-contained story, its primary function is to set up events for the future. Lifebringer was only the prelude to coming events. What will happen next is going to be hugely important to the series, and as Lifebringer's credits suggest, it is the beginning of the end. The end of what? I can't say yet. It will be a while before we see the next installment of the Spartan Legacy, years even, but trust me, it will be worth it.